Cameron Kasky.
And I'm Tim Miller, and this is FY Pod. It is the weekend show, so we have our guest coming up here. She's running for Congress. She does some spicy congressional TikTok videos and YouTube videos. I'm pumped to talk to her. It's Kat. We'll ask her how to pronounce her last name when she comes on. But first, we want to, unfortunately, we had to have a little bonus segment here at the top because there was yet another mass shooting in Florida yesterday at Florida State University. At least a couple are dead and others injured. And Cam sent our little FY Pod chain a text about how there were freshmen at his high school when the Parkland shooting happened who are now seniors at Florida State. So it is the second that they've experienced. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about that before we get to the guest.
Yeah, so there's this thing that happens when you're in Florida or the United States of America where sometimes a lot of people just get shot. And there was a shooting at FSU yesterday. We don't know too much other than it seems as though this was right-wing violence, what we've learned about the shooter, about his experience with other students at Florida State University, his mother, a sheriff's deputy. And it's another one of those shootings, not unlike the Parkland shooting, where every new piece of information we learn about the person who did it tells us that this is something we could have seen a mile away. And this is something that could have been prevented with certain laws that the state of Florida actively goes out of their way to prevent from passing, right? So this was an instance where safe storage could have prevented the shooting. This appears to have been his mother's gun. And there is no safe storage in Florida, and people like Ron DeSanctimonious and everybody else over there is going to get in the way of that. But, whenever there's a mass shooting, I get a lot of text messages from people saying, hey, how you doing? Just checking on you. Everything all right? And I'm sort of like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I wasn't there. I'm in New York City right now, but I think it affects everybody in a very interesting way. And I find myself wondering if they're texting me to check on me or if they're texting me because they want to feel a little bit better. That make any sense, Tim?
For sure. I do. I wonder about that, right? Because I think about myself in that situation, and it's like, on the one hand, you want to be demonstrate empathy. On the other hand, you have feelings that you're trying to deal with, and it's like, are you projecting your own anxiety onto the other person, or in the guise of caring about them? And I don't really know the answer to that. I guess I don't know. I've never been in your shoes. What would be? What is useful? Is
yeah, it's
useful?
Complicated. It's like
because if nobody texted you, you'd probably feel like, well, I guess it's over now. I guess we've hit the 8-year statute of limitations on when I get texts about mass shootings.
Yeah. It's a similar thing I experienced when like a friend of mine has a grandparent pass away. It's like my grandfather died last year and it was devastating to me and it absolutely tore my world apart and it really fucked me up. But sometimes when I see somebody post about their dead grandparent and I'm about to text, hey, I'm so sorry that your grandparent died, I stop myself because I'm like, they're going to know that I don't actually care. Like because that's what grandparents do, right? They die. Like when people texted me about my grandpa dying, I was like, thanks, but like, you don't know what I lost. You don't understand what this meant to me because we all know like grandparents tend to die. So when I see somebody's grandfather, I'm like, okay, well, that is what happens, right? So I think it's sort of this mixture when people text me about this type of thing. I think there's just 3 levels to it. There's like, they're really checking on me. I want to make sure I'm okay. Or they're projecting and they just want to feel like they're a good person for checking in. And also they're confused and they're hoping that I might be able to offer some sort of clarity to them. They have a lot of questions about what's going on. They think that texting somebody who they closely associate with this type of thing is going to help it make more sense for them. And I think it's all 3 of those things to varying degrees, depending on who you're talking to. And I get it. There was a young woman who was at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School with me during the shooting in 2018. And she texted me, hey, thinking of you. And in my head, I'm like, okay, you know better than anybody that like we were in the same shooting. Like, why are you checking in on me? Like, just because I am one of the dumb assholes who went on TV to talk about it doesn't mean that I'm more emotionally affected by this than you are. But I think she just was like looking to someone who does kind of put themselves out, and looking to someone who has assumed something of a leadership position, and hoping that there might be some sort of sense that we could make of all of this. But all this is to say, it's important for us not to forget that if this shooter was trans or a registered Democrat or a person of color, the right will be talking about this shooting for weeks to come. But it appears this shooting was a white, young conservative. There had been some quotes coming from classmates who had been in political clubs and who had seen him talk about it. And they said that he had said some very inflammatory things that go, quote, beyond conservatism. Things about multiculturalism and how communism is ruining America. It seems as though this shooter is the type of 4chan freak that does these types of things, the type of 4chan freak who shot up my high school. And because of that, I don't think the right's going to be talking about it for very long.
Yeah. I don't know what you think about this, but part of me kind of just hates the race to like figure out what this fucking person wrote on Instagram 3 years ago about like politics, or like what this person's identity is discussion after these sorts of things. Because like, you know, I mean, like there are people, like obviously there are people that have mental health issues that have a wide variety of political views. There are people that like are motivated to violence by politics, right? Like, and those are like two different kind of things, right? Like people that like somebody that got like really, you know, obviously it's very important if somebody got really like obsessed with white replacement theory and they were inspired by the New Zealand shooter or whatever. Like to me, that's like kind of, that's important to know, because that's then law enforcement's job to start trying to sniff out those kind of folks. Like the other side of this to me kind of feels just like people are desperate for something to grab onto because they don't think that there's no any other solutions, right? And like that, to me, that's like the frustrating part about this, because like you mentioned the safe storage thing. Like it's frustrating to me that like that there is like that we would go to identity questions like over practical questions, right? Like I was yelling at there was the Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, tweeted the other day about how he thinks that the Trump assassination was an inside job. And it's like, this is the kind of thing that some fucking asshole senator falls back on, because you can't be like, no, actually what happened is a fucking crazed kid like was able to get 1,000 rounds at the fucking REI or wherever he went the day that he tried to kill the president, and that there wasn't any issues with that like a 19-year-old can get 1,000 rounds of bullets. Like it feels like that was the issue here, not some secret thing. But like, you know, it doesn't that, do you feel like just too beaten down about that to even like too hopeless on like actual solutions? Or I don't know, how do you
well, I think there's definitely people trying to play it as a team sport and say like, ooh, when this terrible thing happens in this country that one person does, you know, who can we pin it on, right? What team can we say did this? But yeah, I think you kind of alluded to this. There's also a degree to which it's about identifying motive, because that is how you get to the bottom of cases like this. So, you know, when the shooter from my high school was carving swastikas into desks, right, and using certain slurs and using this type of inflammatory language, once we're able to really observe these patterns of behavior, it becomes easier to prevent these sorts of things, is what I say. And yet, you know, now Trump has already gotten rid of the bipartisan school safety board, and law enforcement who Republicans like point to when it comes to stopping these shootings. When they say, oh, the way to stop these shootings is stronger law enforcement stuff, they don't actually do a very good job tracking and preventing these things. So I guess there's no use, right, talking about the white replacement theory motivations of guys like this, because at the end of the day, if law enforcement sees you being racist or, you know, inflammatory far right, they'll actually be like, hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. Me too. So I don't know what to do other than look at the situation for what it is and say, you know what, this does seem like a situation where a cop's child accessed a gun, a cop's child who had been known to say white supremacist things and killed a bunch of people. It's hard not to associate the white supremacism with the violence, because white supremacy and violence tend to go hand in hand historically.
Yeah. One more thing before you just on like the actual politics, like is not the answer to do politics again. I know that like you kind of did that with March for Our Lives, and maybe it's a sense of it's somebody else's chance to do politics. But I went to a Matt Gaetz event at a gun show in the Florida Panhandle because it's only a couple hours from my house. I just wanted to write an article about it. I used it as an excuse to go to the beach. And it was so alarming.
The beaches in Pensacola are beautiful.
They are beautiful. It was so alarming at this event. Kyle Rittenhouse was there, and whoever the local state senator is. Now that Gaetz went to Congress, well, now he's a competitor in the podcast space. But anyway, this was a year or two ago, and it was so alarming that
But I'm sorry, did you say he's a competitor in the podcast space?
Yeah, you know, he's left Congress and he failed he failed his job at becoming attorney general, and now he's a competitor, getting lower ratings than we are. Anyway, like all of the speeches were about how they need constitutional carry now and how they need to roll back the laws that Rick Scott passed after Parkland, right? And to me, like, that is insane. And are we sure that in Florida, like, this cannot be a useful political cudgel again to just be like, these extremist freaks, like, don't want people to even have to lock up their gun. They want 18-year-olds to have unlimited access to firearms. Like, I really don't think the median voter like wants that. And can't it be a political issue again? Or are you just like, nah, we tried that? And I don't know.
I think at this point, extremist freak is like something that a Florida congressional candidate would put on their campaign poster. Like, I actually think somebody would be, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a new sort of like tea party in Florida called the Extremist Freaks. But I don't know. I think that it is very crazy seeing people on the right advocate for students to be carrying on campus. They want students to carry. They think that shootings like this could be prevented by college students carrying guns. Meanwhile, we're also sending ICE to disappear college students. Yeah. So
what would happen if they tried to disappear a college student that was exercising their constitutional carry right, and that student killed the ICE officer? I was wondering which side they'd be on that one. That would be tough.
It is confusing, this First and Second Amendment. It's almost, you know, it's crazy that we sort of had those two things down for a couple centuries, give or take, you know, and now everything's getting a little confusing. I don't know. I think that the response to this shooting would be a bit more noticeable, and I think it'll be something to follow if this was not right-wing violence. But since this is a shooter who has expressed white supremacist views, he's been quoted in the school paper speaking negatively about student protesters against Trump. It seems as though the Republicans are done with this, and they're going to focus on Chris Van Hollen drinking water, or that they're calling, I guess, a margarita. So,
all right. Well, Cameron, you're never uplifting in these topics, but I guess it's supposed to be my job to do that. But I'm not really.
Listen, everybody. If your child survives a mass shooting, God forbid they have to be one in the first place, let them know that one day they can either be the vice chair of the DNC spending $20 million to unseat Democrats, or a podcast co-host, and not even the popular one. The podcast co-host who's like the hanger-on.
You're going to be the popular one soon enough. All right, everybody. Me and Cameron had to hop on a day early. We'll be back tomorrow. We have a great interview with a Gen Z candidate running for Congress. So make sure to go subscribe to our FY Pod page. We'll put the link right here in the YouTube, and so you can see that full interview. It's going to be a doozy. We'll see you then.